Welcome to the Early Years Scotland podcast. I'm Lorna, EYS Policy and Engagement Manager and your podcast host. Early Years Scotland is the country's national leading organisation that supports our youngest children from pre-birth to the age of 5. We're a third sector organisation that's been established for over 55 years, and we're really proud of our track record of supporting those who work for and on behalf of Scotland's youngest children. There are 4 strands to what we do. We work directly with children and families within communities and prisons across Scotland, encouraging bonding, attachment and parental engagement through lots of fun and exciting shared play and learning experiences. We provide membership support to a range of early learning and childcare settings. We create and deliver high quality professional learning events and courses to help equip the early years workforce and anyone who supports young children with the very best skills and knowledge. And finally, we engage with a range of policy and decision makers to reflect the voices both of our members and of the children and families we work with, helping to directly influence and shape the policy and practice that impacts on our work. We're delighted to have the opportunity to sit down with some great guests on this podcast and have a chat about all things early years. So let's get stuck in. On this episode, we're joined by Professor John McKendrick. John is co-director of the Scottish Poverty and Inequality Research Unit within the Glasgow School for Business at Glasgow Caledonian University. John's research interest covered children's use of space, children's play and child poverty. He was on the board of Play Scotland from 2007 to 2017 and has edited 8 collections of papers on play. He recently chaired the academic and practitioner panel of the IPA Glasgow 2023 World Conference and edited 2 collections of papers sharing perspectives on priorities for play and inspirations for play. John is also Commissioner for Fair Access to Higher Education and co-director of the Scottish Poverty and Inequality Research Unit at Glasgow Caledonian University. In this work, he is primarily concerned to inform the work of practitioners and campaigners beyond the Academy who seek to tackle poverty in Scotland. Thank you very much for coming in today. As I said, we're very excited to be kind of relaunching the podcast and trying to get the early years message, as much of an early years message out to as many people as possible. Within our organisation, we're, when you hear Early Years Scotland, you think it's only about early years and early years policy, but obviously it's so much wider than that. We work directly with children and families, so there's so much stuff that affects them. We'll just have a wee chat today, if that's okay. But before we get started, I thought it might be quite nice to ask what early years means to you, the importance of early years, how you see that.
I suppose it's got memories. The first thing is memories. Not so much of my own memories of being in the early years. Actually, this sounds terrible, is a fire. Because my nursery went in fire, and when I say I smell smoke, my instantly taken back to my nursery. So that's an odd early years memory I've got. But with my kids, I just remember it's one of those seminal moments in your life. When your kid goes to the nursery or the playgroup or the school, whatever early year setting, whichever one they go to for the first time. The kind of landmark moments in family life. And I've got 3 kids, so I've had 3 chances to see that. Now I've got 2 grandkids. In fact, the first one went to P1 yesterday. So I've had lots of those memories, memory moments of the big stepping over the threshold to go into an early year setting for the first time.
Lovely. There's the transitions is a one that always I just love. Like I just love my son's in primary 2 now, but just seeing them all going to school and and how they've been prepared by that for the nursery and it's just it's special. We're in such a privileged position doing this job. It really is. I absolutely love my job. But anyway, we're here today to talk about the playing through the crisis, the really important research that's been done around COVID and the lessons on play as a child's fundamental right, which I'm sure you'll appreciate, something that really resonated with us here at Early Years Scotland. As you know, we provide direct services to families in communities throughout Glasgow and the West, and we had to adapt our services really quickly, obviously, when COVID hit. One of the first things we did was sort of have a brain dump and go, right, how can we help our families? How can we support them? So let's make sure that we're keeping in regular contact. We set up food distribution. We, resources, contact with practitioners for ideas, online sessions, all that kind of things. But it's really funny that when we started to be able to come back together and restrictions relaxed and we could have in sessions again, parents commented on the lack of opportunity that their children had to play and interact with their peers, and the impact that that's had, despite obviously efforts on our part, which are much appreciated. And we've actually fed back to our funders just how much this has impacted, because we wanted to show that although we were doing all these things, that opportunity to play just wasn't quite there. So, do you want to tell us a bit about them?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not that there wasn't play during the pandemic. There absolutely was playing, and in some respects there was some more opportunities for play, because formal education wasn't quite as long as it was, so that afforded a little bit more time for different things. But it was particular aspects of play that we lost, and I think that was a really important thing. And you're right, organisations, Early Years Scotland and others that are providing play in communities, or play opportunities in communities, pivoted and were able to adapt their service and provide an offer that kept things ticking over. But that interaction, that personal interaction with kids, the social interaction that comes with that, and obviously the outdoors experiences were severely restricted. So I think that was the real issue that we should have woke up to. And I suppose the concern I've got is that we've quickly forgot about that. We have the what we really missed during COVID, that we knew immediately after COVID that actually we really need to hold on to this. This is important. I'm not sure the message is strong that, valuing children interacting with each other through play, affording opportunities for ready access to neighbourhoods and everyday incidental play. I think that's off the agenda again.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think what we feel a wee bit is that this really massive thing happened in everybody's lives, but when you're really small and and the adjustment of being expected to go into a formal school setting, and especially for the kind of COVID kids, as we refer to them, the children who perhaps would have been at nursery, or even the children who were the babies that were born who are only now getting to nursery. And it's different in nursery because it's obviously a lot less formal, but specifically for the little ones who missed out on that kind of that interaction at nursery, who then went on to school, who are kind of had this big massive trauma, and they're just expected to go on as, this is how school was, so this is how school continues to be. Maybe one day a week you can wear your trainers rather than your school uniform, but even that was something that I think is really, and we keep talking about learning from the lessons of the pandemic, but it's just not quite getting it with that.
Yeah, and there's real recognition that the foundations that are laid in the early years aren't just important for early years, but they carry right through a child's life. Mm-hmm. So if you miss those foundations, it's not lost forever. I mean, it's been overstatement to say that, but it does make things much more difficult, and the challenges it presents for the later years of primary schools are different because they haven't had that grounding, that interaction in the early stages. And one of the other hats that I wear in the job that I do as Commissioner for Fair Access to Higher Education, that seems miles away from early years. However, there's a real understanding then that these inequalities that are hardwired in the early stages in life intensify and are built upon from that early foundation. So there's concern in higher education and secondary education that what kids have lost in early years will have ramifications further down the line, 10 years time. 15 years time, there might still be ramifications that come from that, unless we can do things differently to address those deficiencies. And it is a deficiency, a play deficiency.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've done a bit of work with the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists very, very soon after the pandemic. And, I hate to say that children are behind, but they are. Their speech and language is not as developed because they didn't have those opportunities for interaction. And, we're very aware of it. It's something that we're working on in our own sessions, and we're supporting our Earlier Scotland members to be able to but then that's just something else that if they've missed out on this and they've missed out on that, then we're not going to know, like you say, unless something's done. And it's funny actually, because there's something cyclical about that, the higher education side of things, because, well, you might have people that want to go into it, it's a bit off tangent, but early years is a career pathway, because it's something that we've been looking at the other end of the scale, that it's not seen as a professional or a job, it's seen as low paid, low skilled, it's gendered, exceptionally gendered, and that's something that we want to break the mould on a wee bit as well. It's not necessarily related to the gaps
don't
now,
get me started in that, because I've been banging on about that for a long time, about how the sector is undervalued. And there's a lot of talk about the importance of early years. Well, the importance of early years needs professional staff. It doesn't just happen. It happens because you've got skilled people that know the needs of young people, and they're able to facilitate that. And it's not everybody that's got the skill set that can enable that to happen. happen.
No,
so I completely agree that's something that's really lacking in I think not just Scotland, but it is lacking in Scotland, is that sense of it being a profession, that, you know, valuing it to the point that there's clear pathways in higher education and not just further education for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things, you know, I think we certainly feel that we're not seen as professional because there is no one defined pathway. There's many ways that you can get in early years, and it is seen as, oh well, you're not going to go on to higher education, but you could do this. Well, I couldn't do it. I'm a parent, and, you know, on day out, and it's just, and I think there's still that, again, talking about lessons from COVID, there's that thing of, you know, we were there so that the key workers could do what they needed to do. Early years professionals stepped in, made sure that children still had that interaction, made sure that children still had those links, and also allowed the rest of the country to function. But there's not any materialisation of recognition of that, you know, because we are a total Cinderella service. So it's right, okay, thanks very much, but back in your box and make your macaroni pictures.
Yeah. I mean, the foundations of society, you know, your shop workers, your critical service workers, your early years practitioners. You're right, they were, you know, we clapped the nurses during COVID and quickly forgot when we get back to business as usual, and the early years practitioners fall into the same category. And it's so much more important than just facilitating others to do their work. And I think that's a concern I've got about the childcare 140 hours. I think it's the right thing. I think, you know, a country that's geared up for the future is a country that needs to allow everybody to participate in the labour market if they want to, and childcare is an absolutely critical and necessary component of that. However, I think the way that we talk about childcare is as if that's it. It's about facilitating people's participation in the labour market without acknowledging that, well, one, childcare itself as a profession, but also the experience that children get in that childcare. It's not just about a childcare service, it's about an experience for children, it's about a foundation for children. And I suppose I've got a concern that we are too narrow in our understanding of what early years does. It's to enable somebody else to achieve something rather than actually the importance of the workers and the importance of the children's experience.
What we're seeing with 1140, and again, it's fantastic, it's a great policy, it's a great written down policy, but the way that it's working in practice isn't working. And it's something, you know, we represent members from both local authority nurseries, but private, voluntary and independent nurseries. And there's a massive gulf. I mean, you know, you'll be fully aware of even the gulf in pay and the gulf in terms and conditions. And a nursery manager in a private nursery gets paid the same as a practitioner in a local authority nursery. So why would you go through all those extra things if you could get paid the same that you're getting paid as a manager, as a practitioner? So, I mean, from our point of view, we've called for the establishment of a national pay scale within early years, similar to all other professions, regardless of where you work, that's actually about what you do, because we're getting a bit fed up of the workforce being as undervalued as we are. And you know, there's really a lot of drives to get more people into early years, which is good, but it's not focusing on like that. You're so right, children need to have an experience, and it has to be high quality. Children have to, you know, and it has to be about the child as much as it is about the parent. And there also has to be a recognition as well. I mean, 1140, we the sessions that we run, some of them are funded for the eligible twos, and it's Stay, Play and Learn. It's a family-based learning environment where parents can come in with their kids, the children, there's qualified early years practitioners there who will run services and who will, you know, do all the things that a child would do in a playgroup or a nursery or anything like that. But the parents get support on things like income maximisation, housing. They get, you know, I've never written a CV before, can you give us a hand? And also we really empower the parents to recognise the skills that they have and how those skills can be transferred into the labour market if they want to. You know, we've got families who have never been within the labour market, or families who have been away from it for so long, but that reinvestment's not there just now, and that's something that we're kind of in the background always kind of banging on a wee bit about. But until you get a level playing field, and you know, the private nurseries are having a really difficult time at the moment, and they're not even sustaining, and we're arguing that they shouldn't just be sustaining, they should be thriving. These people are looking after our children, these people are raising the next generation, but it's okay to, you know, to pay them bad wages and to, you know, think that what they do isn't really that important because they're just sitting colouring in all day.
Absolutely, yeah. I disagree with anything that you said. I mean, a parent is the most important person for raising a child in the early years sector. I absolutely appreciate that, but there's work to be done there to support some parents And that what you just talked about there, about using the vehicle of play as a means to engage a parent, to make sure that the incomes are maximised. And let's be honest, income maximisation is what people are entitled to, and they're not getting it. So there's so many wider benefits that come through play as a vehicle, early years as a vehicle to engage, that aren't acknowledged and absolutely should be. But those issues you're talking about, the structural problems of the labour market for early years, I think it would be very difficult to argue that you shouldn't have a single pay scale that reflects the work that's done. And we will hear all manner of arguments about why it can't be done, but it's a right thing to do. It's the right thing to do in principle, but it's also really important, as you say, if you want to grow the sector. If you want to get the benefit of the value that the sector has, you will not attract people in. I think it's significant that in the last year or two there have been problems with recruitment to nursing, and that reflects the problems that have been highlighted and aired in the media, with the nursing profession just being undervalued at the current time. And it will be the same with the early years as well. If you don't remunerate properly, how on earth are you going to attract people who wouldn't consider it to be a career to take part?
Yeah, absolutely. And what we've also seen is a bit of a drive to get more men into childcare, which we're absolutely on board with, because children should be, it should reflect what society looks like, and they should have role models, from that aren't just women. But that's not why we pay the women that are there more. And that's another, really fundamental thing that fundamentally value in the work that women, the workforce, the majority of whom are women, do. And like you say, that play, and even things like, children will bring things home from their early years setting. This is what I learned to do today, and then that teaches the parent. And it's very easy when you're a busy parent or parent and grandparent to forget that it's okay to sit down for 20 minutes and play. But if you've got kids who have missed out on that, and families working from home, you weren't engaging with your children. They were playing, but I think my wee boy got put out with bowls of water and spoons every day, because it was like something that's loose parts, but something that's kind of quick and easy for him to do. But it's about how we sort of channel that, and how that then fits in with Article 31. And we are in a bit of limbo at the moment around the UNCRC incorporation, with the delays, and it's not perhaps as much of a priority of the Scottish Government as it was, the kind of making sure it gets through. So how concerned are you about the impact that this is going to have on realisation of Article 31 and just sort of children's rights overall?
So I suppose my main concern is the realisation of the rights rather than the enactment into law of the right, because if you've not got the right attitude, if you don't believe in it, then you can have it wired into law and it's still going to be problematic in realising its potential. I think the important thing is changing the mindset. So these things that we've talked about, the importance of play during the pandemic, which is what brought us here, and we haven't went off tangent as far as I'm concerned when we're talking about paying conditions, because all these bundle of things together are about valuing what the early years sector is, what it's contributing. And I think that's the most important thing, is hardwiring that, understanding that that's fundamental to a well-functioning society, is a valued sector, understanding the contributions, plural, that it makes, and the rights follow from that. I think it's really important. It's a headline act to the UNCRC. I am absolutely not saying it's not an issue. It's right that we pursue it, but it actually isn't the answer. The answer is the attitude that underpins it, that leads to you wanting a UNCRC. And yeah, it'll give you a couple of more bullets to fire, tools to use. But as I say, I think you're talking about a mindset shift in society where the rights have become something that are just what we do, what we believe in, how we are.
Yeah, and ironically, something that we're doing in the early years sector on a daily basis, because of course, GIRFEC comes from UNCRC. The principles are the same. So the workers within earlier settings are adhering to those and promoting those principles and making sure that children have the opportunity to realise their rights on a daily basis. But as long as we continue to be undervalued and that, we're never seen on par as teachers, and that's not fair, and a lot of that is the professionalisation. But there'll be a lot about the responsibilities on teachers to make sure that children are realising their rights. But we're doing it. We could show, we could show that more people, and we've said that to our staff when we've been talking about it, like, you don't have anything to worry about because you're doing it. We've seen you do it every day, kind of thing.
Absolutely. In this particular sector, it's not the sector will be totally transformed through the UNCRC.
Not at all.
Others might, but absolutely not the early years sector.
Yeah, absolutely. That's quite interesting, that. And how do you think that with regards to the research that was done, can you just kind of talk us through the kind of the three key areas that were looked at, and sort of, and then we can maybe have a think about forward planning on that.
Sure. I mean, they were looking at examples. I mean, the International Play Association held a kind of global call, if you like, to have stellar examples of how play was enabling society to function through crisis, and it showcased some of these in a publication, Play in Times of Crisis. And it showed the myriad of ways in which, in different circumstances, workers in the early years, and also beyond early years, I mean, there were some other examples with older kids, were able to allow play to take place. Some of them are simple ideas, some of them won't seem anything out of the ordinary now, because so many people did, like home packs to facilitate play, but we weren't doing it before. That required a creative mindset to think, right, okay, how can I get round this problem that I have of access, and how can I deliver something alternative to that? So I think there was a lot of creativity that was demonstrated, and I think that's one of the qualities of a progressive society and a well-functioning economy, is you get creative people that can do things differently, can disrupt, and can change, and I think the early years sector demonstrated that, had to, and did.
Yeah, and I think, it's, I mean, obviously I'm policy in this organisation. I've worked in policy for 15 years, and the resistance to many aspects of change are always because we just can't do it because it's too difficult. But we did it then because we had to. So if we can do it in a crisis, then why can't we be looking at alternative ways to do things, and really, and also from kind of going back to that 1140 thing and the expansion, because obviously they're looking to expand that to 1 and 2 year olds, and we have been reassured somewhat by the Scottish Government that it's not going to be sort of 1140 2.0, that there's a recognition that the younger children will need, different, perhaps a different, it's not just about, that it may be there for parents who have to go back to work or whatever, but there's hoping, and we've been able to influence them to take a much more family-based approach, and we would love, shamelessly plugging, we would love our Stay Play and Learn services to be part of that funded entitlement, because we do have pilots where it is, but it is about that kind of bringing families together and letting parents, like you say, see through play. Because when you talk to parents about things like brain development, it can be a bit like, oh, that sounds like a law and something that but you're seeing it actually by the fact that last week your little one could only do X, Y, and Z with that toy, but now they can do this with it, or they've worked out the jigsaw, or they're separating the colours, or that sort of thing. So we're very much on the kind of family-based approach, but there's also a recognition that things are really horrendous for families at the moment. Really, really difficult. More difficult, and I'm writing in publications and reports now, it's not heat or eat any longer, it's neither. And that's the reality. So, it's about how do we make sure that parents are still, and carers, and just within Earlier Scotland, when we say parents, we mean parents and carers, and families overall, and that wider family unit. How can we make sure that parents are still supported to play with their children when they've literally got the weight of the world on their shoulders?
Yeah, in the state that we've got ourselves in, that so many families are in such a perilous circumstance, is something that really has to change. Yeah. And that's beyond the earlier sector's gift to do that.
Yeah, well beyond.
But the work that you do is bringing a little bit of light and a little bit of kind of quality and a little bit of reassurance that I'm not a bad parent into people's lives, and that's really, really important. I mean, if you're struggling to feed and clothe and heat your house, that's impacting your self-worth. You might know that there are reasons beyond your control that are forcing that situation upon you, but you can't help but feel as if you're lesser through that. What you talk about understanding the value of play and seeing the development of a kid, that just gives that little bit of bolstering of self-worth to parents. Is really important, and realising that I can be a good parent, despite all the subtle messages that are sent, through the media about me failing and me not doing my turn and me being a drain in society. Then no, I'm not. I am doing good work here. I'm a good parent. I can see my child developing, and I think unless you have that or that demonstration from the play sector about what's going on, it's difficult for parents to see the value of that, because it's something that we treat as an everyday. They maybe don't understand their role, or they don't understand what's going on with their kids. So I think that's really important, more so in these difficult, troubled times for families than it was previously. Always important, but I say particularly now.
Yeah, and it's funny because we've always been very much about the whole family, but actually didn't realise how much that was the case until COVID happened, and where we're now, our early years practitioners are so much more than early years practitioners. They're family support workers. They are dealing with things that they have never had to deal with before, because families are dealing with things that they've never had to deal with before. And but it comes back to value, and it comes back to that, but it must be fun to just play with blocks all day and make Play-Doh, and that's not what's happening. We're doing so much more. And I think from our perspective, even just so my role, I used to just be policy, whereas that's kind of expanded now into engagement. And one of the things was working with families and just making sure that the people that we are seeing on a daily basis are getting everything they're entitled to. Exactly what you said. It's things that they're entitled to, and they've got no idea, because you can do as many awareness raising campaigns and that sort of thing, but if you're not in that headspace as a parent, finding yourself in a situation, and if you've never been in a situation like that before, you don't know where to go and you don't know what to do. So even I think from our perspective, knowing that we can just provide a little bit of reassurance, and then that kind of comes back to the third sector overall, doesn't it, and the work that the third sector does. And we're in a really unique position because we are a third sector organisation, but we're supporting private sector nurseries, we're supporting local authorities, so we can kind of see it from all angles, which is quite as a unique position, certainly.
Yeah, you're trusted. I mean, that's it. You're going to work with somebody you trust. I mean, there's always, and it's wrong, but there's always a concern about the council or the government as being the enemy, and they're maybe going to look at my benefits, and it's the vulnerability that people face that lead them to have that concern over what the big other organisation could do to them. That's not the case with your early years practitioner or your Citizens Advice Bureau that sit outside, if you like, government. People can feel as if they can trust them, and in times where those services are really important, then again it's of heightened significance. It shouldn't be that way, but that's the reality. It's vitally important, and you're right, it goes way beyond the work we're doing with children. It's a societal benefit.
And it, there is always such an emphasis on the importance of making sure that children are looked after, and and that children are this Scotland becomes the best place in the world to grow up, and that's absolutely what we want. But we can't take that burden on ourselves as an early years sector. But what we can do is make sure that that we're providing those high quality experiences, and that we're supporting children and families to and we're recognising that things are different now, and that even the way in which sessions are run within nurse settings, women don't go to work in the morning and then come home and or go to have their wee job in the afternoon. Life is not like that any longer. So there's always that kind of wider policy change, which we're always banging the drum for here. It's
really important because again it's the taken for granted, and it's understanding the importance of what that sector provides for everybody, and it's not just a childcare service, and that message isn't consumed by all, isn't understood by all, and therefore that message needs to be communicated. The stellar examples of good work need to be shown. The light bulb moments where we're switching on what the early years sector provides, or an early years practitioner can provide, that others just take for granted or haven't even thought about. We have to illuminate. We have to let people know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things. I mean, we have all the answers. We like to think we have all the answers because we're seeing it on a daily basis, and I think we're quite fortunate in that unique position we're in with our work, that because we work so closely with our children and families, because we know the children and families, and then from that the communities that we're in, then we're genuinely able to influence policy at a level, because we're seeing it. We're not talking on behalf of somebody who's seen it. We're in there, we're feeding back. We know, and we've built up really good relationships with families who talk to us, not just from their perspective, but well, how would you do it? What do you think needs to be changed? And that they feel valued as well. And at a time where things are really difficult, it's like you say, and parents, just that little bit of confidence in their self-worth and the knowledge that they can do it and they're really good at it. But to even from that saying, well, what would you do? How would you do this differently? How we need you to help us influence what's going ahead. So that's quite a privileged position for us, and it is something that we will always continue to bang the drum about. But so just kind of wrapping up almost in terms of next steps, if you had a magic wand, if you had a magic wand, or 3 wishes, or that kind of utopia, but with a bit of realism in it, for play and recognising the importance of play for children, what if you could turn round to First Minister just now and say, this is what we need to do, what would you say in that?
So I wouldn't just be turning to the First Minister. No. I'd be like talking to myself as well, because I think parents have drifted in terms of their understanding of play and what play is, or more particularly children's independent use of free time and independent use of space. And it does feel a little bit as if I'm harking back to yesteryear, but some ways there were some aspects of yesteryear that are much better than today, and I think it is important that we kind of reflect on that and don't just assume that things are better now or would have been different if we had now what we didn't have then. So I think parents need to let go a little. They need to be confident in their children and not feel the need to fill up their timetables after school. Let play take place before homework in the evening is actually probably a good mantra of parent, rather than seeing it to be bad parenting. Allowing their children to have more independent use of space and allow our communities to be more full of play than they are at present, I think would be good. So that'd be one thing that if I was waving my magic wand, I would just have a little bit less pressure in time, a little bit less expectation that parents are taxi drivers and that we allow children independent mobility.
You've got me very much reflecting on my own.
It's true. I mean, and I said that when I started talking about this, I talked about I need to change, or I should have changed, because I was that parent. I was certainly not that child. I think of the freedom I had as a child, and all the benefits that come from it. And my strongest memories of childhood are not sitting in a mathematics class. They're about the incidental moments in play and experiences that happened outside school, fundamental to what I reflected my good childhood. So my first magic wish would be that we allow play to flourish a little bit more and less constraint on parents. That would absolutely be the case. I think the second wish is an odd one. That our first response to play is always, how can we introduce that better playground? And I think that thinking would need to shift as well. The playgrounds, I think, are important, because playgrounds are of symbolic importance, that children have a space in the environment and they can be good fun as well. There's absolutely, that is the case. But I do have a problem with being the first response all the time to play, because it shows a misunderstanding of what play is. And I wouldn't say I want less playgrounds. No. I actually would want more. I'd want them scattered throughout rather than in centralised places. But a second wish is that our first response to play is not just about, right, how can we introduce this playground? When you talk about planning gain, it's all about, how can we get the playground in the neighbourhood? So I'd like that to change as well. And third one, I'm just going to pander to my audience there. I think it's really to get that remuneration right, get that play development as a pathway right. I mean, we did a thing in the International Play Conference that we had a few months ago in Glasgow, and we asked people their priorities for play. It was a really good volume. It's free to access. You can download it. In fact, maybe what I could do after it is send it on to yourself. You can make it available.
Yeah, we can pop that on our website.
That'd be great. We're keen for that to happen. But the priority that I put down there was that about getting play, early years play, and play as a profession understood as a pathway in higher education. And, over the course of my career, I'm now getting to the latter stages of my career, and I've been an external examiner at 3 institutions in England that were play degrees. In Northumbria, in Leeds Beckett, and in Gloucestershire. And just pause for a moment. Play degrees, they were about play. That was the whole degree was in play, and the thinking then that we needed to professionalise that workforce. None of those degrees exist. They've all morphed into childhood studies, something a bit more broad. I'm not saying it's a bad degree, but it's not quite understood that value of play if you're not got it absolutely central to it.
Become a component, hasn't it, rather than the main thing.
Absolutely. You get play therapy and the highly specialised degrees that are there. We've never had it in Scotland.
No.
So, my third degree would be, my third wish rather, would be, let's get the full range of pathways right, because I think there will be trickle down benefits that come from that. The professionalisation of a workforce means it's more highly valued, it's less difficult to ignore, it's better able to articulate its value. So 3 wishes there. Super.
Let's get to it. Thank you so much for coming in. Thank you very much for chatting with me. It's been great. It's always good to. I'll speak about policy till the cows come home. So it's always good to kind of to have that. And just a pleasure to have you. Thank you very much.
Likewise, I've really enjoyed that. It's a nice chance to talk about these things, because I think we don't talk about it enough.
Yeah.
And although I'm not an early years specialist, I think that we need to be speaking to non-early years specialists as well.
Absolutely.
I find that in the core field of my work is poverty action. We're very good at talking to each other, but that's not going to change things. You need to talk to others and bring others on board. Your early years practitioners need to not be shy about telling the story of the value of early years practitioners to people that are way beyond it.
And we need to get better at that as well, because we're so busy doing that we don't stop and smell the roses and go, well, actually we're doing this really, really well, so let's see if we can take it further and that kind of thing. So lessons to be learned all round.
Absolutely.
Super. Thanks very much, John. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Join us again soon for the next episode. But in the meantime, you can keep up to date with our work through our social media channels. We are Early Years Scotland on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, and you can get me on Twitter at EYS Policy Lorna. Subscribe here so you don't miss out on any further EYS content. Thanks for listening.